what is actually holding you back? Is it you're worried about not having money? Or is it worried about that you theoretically might lose money for a month?
Welcome to the next episode of the Going Indie podcast, the podcast that dives deep into the world of independent creators and developers. In this episode, I'm joined by Tim Condon, a key figure in the Swift on the server world and the creator of Broken Hands. We discuss his journey to going indie, how he manages time across projects like Vapor, open source development, and running events like the server-side Swift conference. Tim also shares insights on hiring employees, building a sustainable business, and maintaining a healthy work-life balance. Let's dive in. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you very much.
It's good to see you.
Nice to see you again.
I feel like we know each other very well, but it's just like I run into you at every conference.
Yeah, it is. We see each other in random cities in the world. It's quite a nice little nice little environment.
Yeah, that's the first cheat I want to know. Like, how do you manage to get at all those conferences?
Persistence. Interesting things to talk about. Just build it up. I've been talking at conferences since 2018, I think. And once you start getting in and people get to know you, then it's a lot easier to get talks in. Yeah.
It's not the shorts.
It's not the shorts. They're good branding.
They're good branding, right?
They're good branding. People recognize me for the shorts.
Yeah.
But no, hopefully it's the content.
So there's now a new conference in Finland.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the most northern conference, I think, is what you call it. Will you still wear shorts if you have to talk there?
Most likely, yeah. I would do. I probably wouldn't wear shorts if we're skiing. But other than that, if we're inside, it's okay.
Okay. So welcome to the Going Indie podcast. This is the podcast where we inspire future indies or those that already went indie. I know you very well, but my audience might not know you. So who's Tim?
Tim. So Tim is a developer based in the UK, in Manchester, focused primarily on server-side Swift and kind of pushing Swift on the server as a thing because it's still relatively niche. It's still quite new, but it has a lot of promise. So that's basically Tim. I do that. I speak at conferences about server-side Swift and Swift. And you'll probably see me around somewhere wearing shorts in a city in the world somewhere, yeah.
And who was Tim before server-side Swift?
So I've been around in the software industry for a long time now, going on 20 years nearly.
20 years?
Nearly, right. Yeah, writing software for nearly 20 years. And I've done everything. Started all the way from like assembly level stuff to C, system development, backend embedded development, mobile development, front-end dev, website stuff. So yeah, I've been around. It's been an interesting journey.
And now you're stuck.
Now I've kind of found my little niche. Yeah, so I did backend stuff for a while, and then I went into mobile stuff. I was a mobile developer for a good few years, and I really liked Swift, the language, but I wasn't that interested in writing front-end apps or mobile apps. And so when server-side Swift presented itself as an opportunity, I thought, let's give it a go because it marries up my two interests.
Right. So is it boiled down to like you don't really like being busy with UI? I just really want to be in the backend.
It's the problems you solve in the backend tend to be a bit more interesting to me, as it's like personally. And you have a bit more freedom in terms of what you can do. You're less constrained by the design guidelines and the limitations that you have. So you can solve much more interesting problems, bigger scale problems, dealing with hundreds of thousands of users, that kind of stuff.
So it's really like the scalability problems
integration problems. How do you integrate stuff from say 10, 20 different services and make it usable and quick and efficient?
And how did you know like server-side Swift is the answer, right? Because in a way it's interesting journey, right? Like you mentioned so many things. You could also say you were kind of looking to find yourself, right? Like when did you know like, okay, this is where I want to seek forward in, like this is where I want to be?
I mean, the real truth is I never have, and I never probably will. I've fallen into every job I've ever had, mostly by accident. And we're very lucky in tech in that things evolve quickly and things change, and change is part of tech. Mm-hmm. And it's very normal to change and adapt and go into different things and try out different areas and try new languages and try back-end, front-end, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not too hard to switch. So if you want to make the switch, it's not, people don't look at you weird. They're like, yeah, go for it. So in terms of server-side Swift, I was doing some back-end stuff at the same time I was doing mobile. I was writing, at the time, Objective-C and Swift, Kotlin and Java, and Python and Ruby. And I was like, this is too much, it's too busy.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed Swift. I think it's got a lot of promise. It's definitely changed over the years, but it's got a really good kind of set of goals that really suit it to the back end as well, especially. So I thought I'd give it a go. And I got involved when Vapor first kind of came on the scene quite early. So I think Vapor was launched in February 2016. I started contributing or kind of writing and playing about with stuff in that summer. And then over the course of that year, I started writing tutorials, and I wrote a big open source project that was kind of like one of the biggest open source projects for Vapor at the time, and was a good use case, a showcase for how stuff works. And I just got more and more involved in the ecosystem. It was never a goal of mine at the time to work in it full time or do it as a job or do it professionally. It just kind of fell that way. And yeah, as you'll probably find with most people going indie, is that you start something on the side, you get really interested into it, and then it starts to take over more and more of your life. And then if you're lucky, you can start to see income from that. So for me, it was people asking for help building stuff, like, how do we do this thing in Vapor? Or how do I make this work in Vapor? Or can you build me something, or that kind of thing?
Consultancy.
Yeah, consultancy stuff, and kind of little bits of contract work. So I did a very similar thing to you. I went part-time at the BBC when I was used to work for the BBC. And I went part-time and went down to 4 days a week as a way of kind of trying out, could I do this properly? It was really good to have that flexibility and just kind of give it a go with very little risk.
Yeah.
Because if it went wrong, you just go back to full-time. It doesn't matter. And so I tried that, and that 1 day a week really allowed me to focus on building out the stuff I wanted to do and building the connections and kind of building a bit of a name for yourself. And then eventually I was getting so busy, I was like, right, let's give full-time a go. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, why not? Let's give it a go.
So you were convinced enough, like, based on that 1 day a week, I earn so much money, it's enough to...
I was having enough requests coming in that I could see that I would be able to do it full-time. And I had some savings. I'd written a book, which had some quite nice residual stuff and kind of passive income.
A book on Vapor.
A book on Vapor, yeah.
And which year is this?
This would have been 2019.
So we're like 3 years in after Vapor was...
Yeah, 2 or 3 years, yeah. So it was Vapor 3 at the time, back in 2019. And yeah, I just thought, let's give it a go. I gave myself a year. So let's see what I can do for a year. If I can get to the point where I'm self-sustainable in a year, I had enough savings and stuff to live on for a year. And so I said, right, give it a year. I'm at the point now where I'm breaking even, essentially. Then let's go from there. And that was 5 years ago.
And how soon in the year did you know, like, okay, that year limit is worth nothing?
I think it was about kind of, well, it's weird. So it's about 6 months in. And I had a couple of big projects that I had won, I guess. So people were asking me for contract work, or I'd pitched contract work to them, and they selected it. So those kind of big projects really kind of solidified the idea that I could do this full time. And then obviously COVID happened.
Yeah, yeah.
So this was like early 2020 when COVID happened. And it was a little bit, so this was like almost 3/4 of the way through my year. And then everything shut. And when you're indie, that can be quite a bit of a scary time, because your income just disappears.
Well, but I mean, COVID didn't mean there was no work anymore, right?
No, but it meant for me, certainly doing all the kind of consultancy stuff, is all the companies were like, right, we're not spending any money. So all the budgets just dried up.
Right.
But within about a month or so, all the companies were like, oh, actually, we need online presences. We need online stores. We need stuff building. We're going all in on this remote work and tech stuff.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was just like ramped up massively. And then that was the kind of the point where I was like, okay, right, this is where we were. And that's when I started to grow as a company. And I had got my first employee in 2020, late 2020, I think. And it's grown from there.
many interesting points to the story. The first thing I realized, to me, you're Mr. Vapor. Like you're almost like Tim Vapor.
Yeah.
Which in a way is you're not the one that originally built Vapor.
No, I'm not. I'm not the one who originally created it. I'm not the only person who works on it. I'm certainly not the only person who contributes to it. We have a great community. But yeah, I am the person who's at all the conferences talking about it.
Yeah.
And probably has the biggest online presence about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Vapor is quite known due to all the work that you did in the open. Well, you're definitely not the only one that built Vapor, right? Like it's a really good shout out, I think, to everybody contributing to the project. But then, so it's also interesting to me that Vapor was new. Swift on the server was new. Back then, we had no idea whether it would be something that's going to be adopted, right? Like we knew Swift quite a while. We knew the language was evolving and there was serious contribution to it from Apple. So there was a future ahead. So in a way you could say like, yeah, probably server-side Swift is going to be something. But to bet your indie journey on that's quite a thing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think we're very lucky in tech in that it's important to remember that in tech, even when times are quite bad, is that if we need to go and find work, certainly as you get yourself relatively established as like senior, and it's not that hard. So like the risk of betting stuff on, say, okay, I'm going to go all in on server-side Swift. I know Swift very well. I've got years of experience as a mobile developer. If it all goes wrong, I can go and find a mobile job. Like the risk is relatively low. I know I'm not going to be out of work for a year. I might be out of work for a month. So I need to account for that, but I'm probably not going to be out of work for a year. So the risk of like doing it yourself is relatively low, I think, compared to, you know, the barriers for entry for tech are very low for building apps and stuff. Like if you have a laptop, you're fine. It's not like we're manufacturing physical products where you've got like a big buy-in cost to set up manufacturing lines and stuff like that. So the risk is very low, and it makes it very easy to take those chances, I think. I think for the bet on server-side Swift, I was just going with the flow. I was just like riding the wave and seeing what happens. Like the writing was on the wall. Like Apple were backing it heavily. They were investing in it heavily for engineering efforts and building libraries and stuff.
Yeah.
And you could kind of see where it was going to go. It wasn't guaranteed, certainly.
And there were downsides as well, right? Like IBM stopped doing things.
Yeah, there were a few little hiccups. So IBM had a server-side Swift framework similar to Vapor. It was kind of not competing, but it had kind of different goals. It was more going for the enterprise stuff. And yeah, they decided that it wasn't working. They couldn't make enough money out of it for IBM, which, to be honest, at the time is not that surprising for their kind of scale.
Yeah. But did that do anything to your trust in server-side Swift?
Personally, no. I think for the community, it did knock it back a little bit. But for me, not really, no. If anything, it was great because it meant all the enterprise companies that were thinking about using IBM now essentially only had Vapor as the thing, and I was the guy doing Vapor.
You saw it as an opportunity right away,
Yeah.
or was that something you realized later?
No, it was right away. As soon as they announced that it was dying, I was there like, if you need help migrating, I'm here. If you want me to build up
Google Ads on IBM's project.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely got me more into focusing on what kind of enterprise people want as well. So I now offer like SLAs and stuff for response times if things go wrong, which is never something I've done before. So like saying, if you have an issue in live, my company will respond within 24 hours to help you out and make sure it's fixed. So that kind of thing is definitely new and not something I'd ever done. It's really good because it gives you that kind of passive income of companies have to pay for that. Even if you don't do anything, they have to maintain that level. So you're always on call essentially. Or your company's always on call.
You created your own.
Yeah, but it builds that passive income of, you know,
Yeah.
stuff that you can rely on.
Is that your recurring income?
Yeah, that's your
trick,
recurring.
in a
Yes,
way?
that's your monthly recurring revenue essentially.
Yeah, right. One thing that fascinates as well is that you say like, I just go for it, or you know, every job that I had, I just went for it.
Yeah.
You make it sound like, you know, I just did it, or you know, but it's a big decision to go from the thing that you do to something else, right? Like you did assembly. How did you know assembly was not the thing anymore and you went for the other thing? And now eventually you did Vapor and you went for server-side Swift. How can you make that decision sound so easy, because I think for many people this is actually something really hard, right? Like they're in their environment, they know what they're doing, they have a great team around them, they're friends with their colleagues, and then an opportunity like server-side Swift pops up. I just go with it, right? Like that's how it sounds now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's probably a bit more involved than that, but essentially, yeah. For me, it's broken down into enjoyment and comfort. So when you're in a really good job, you enjoy it and you're comfortable. You have your good colleagues, you work with great people, you have a nice environment, like maybe nice offices, you work on cool apps and stuff. That gives you a lot of enjoyment and a lot of comfort. And that kind of makes the leaving point, the point where you leave, very difficult. For me, it was when that enjoyment started to drop off. I'm pretty happy being uncomfortable in terms of like not having guaranteed income or doing stuff I don't know or learning stuff or working on stuff I've never done before. So that kind of comfort level for me that's almost exciting, like getting to learn new things and try new stuff out. But the enjoyment thing is a big factor for me. So if I'm doing a job and I'm not enjoying it, I'll go find something else. So for me, the assembly stuff was interesting to start with, and then I realized I'm not that good at it. It's not something I massively enjoy.
I get that.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed the low-level stuff when I was writing low-level stuff. So like my final year thesis at university was writing an operating system in assembly and C. And that was really interesting because you got to learn about how things worked and stuff. In the real world, most people don't write assembly. The main reason for knowing assembly is when you're decompiling apps. So one of the things I used to do is working in cybersecurity and decompiling malware to work out how it worked. It sounds cool. It's not that interesting if your brain doesn't tick that way. And for me, it doesn't.
Yeah.
So when I got to the point, I was like, I'm just not enjoying this. I went and found something else. It was related. I was still doing cybersecurity stuff. I started doing more software than reverse engineering stuff. And so you kind of do those diagonal jumps to find stuff that you enjoy to get your comfort and enjoyment balances at the right level.
But how do you set that aside because I think what I see with previous jobs that I had, where my old colleagues still work there, and I think the hardest challenge for them is to leave behind the colleagues and the convenient environment they have. And I totally get your point, right? Like you will see that something is boring and it's not your thing anymore. But how do you convince yourself? Because the fact is that a new company, you will find new colleagues, you will find new friends. But how do you convince yourself that you need to dare and take that step?
I think it like a lot of it depends on the kind of person you are as well. I suspect a lot of people listening to this will be people who want to work for themselves. They want to go indie. They want to have that freedom. They want to have that responsibility or kind of badge of I work for myself. And the people who want that tend to be quite comfortable jumping into new things, in my experience. The people who don't want to be indie, who are less willing to take those risks, tend to stick in the big jobs. They work for the big companies. They have great lives, and that's their stuff and great for them. Like if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. But the people who want to go indie tend to want to work for themselves. They don't like working for big companies, in my experience at least, and certainly personally as well. I hate working for big companies. It's the politics and the red tape of things that just don't make any sense. So I think a lot of it's like the kind of person you are as well. And for me, it's I can almost feel like the itchy feet when I get to a job and I'm like too comfortable. I'm not enjoying it. I can feel like you lose the enthusiasm of going to work, of what you're working on, and you can see the shiny thing over there. So it's all right. I'm going to go and get the shiny thing.
The potential.
Yeah.
And
try that out. And yeah, as I said, in tech, if it doesn't go wrong, I'll go back.
This one was really helpful for me to convince my wife, right? Like, you know very well what you're doing, but your wife might not always understand because it's technical. And if she's not really into tech, then that's tricky to make her understand. You can show some numbers and stuff, but taking the leap is really a big step, or switching jobs is the same. You step away from some securance. You get a new contract. You need to see if they will want to keep you after the first month or something, going indie, similar. But telling her like, hey, we're in tech. There are so many opportunities out there that if something goes wrong, I can always go back.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a really, really great safeguard. I must say, but we're recording this now in November, and the job market seems a bit more challenging nowadays.
This year has definitely been a lot more challenging, I think. Yeah, but there is stuff out there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Even if your project doesn't work out, say server-side Swift wouldn't work out, you still know what you're doing. So you could do consultancy on something else, right? There's always something different that you can do as an entrepreneur, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a few points to that. The first one is like convincing people it's definitely a cultural thing. When I decided I was going to go and work for myself, the reactions I got from people, certainly in the UK compared to like people in America, were very, very different.
Really?
People in America are like, yeah, go for it. It sounds great. Go and work for yourself. Try it out. They have that kind of entrepreneurial spirit over there. People in the UK are like, oh, that's risky. What happens if it doesn't work? And it's like, I remember speaking to my mum, like, I've quit my job. I'm going to work for myself. She's like, what are you doing? Like, how are you going to pay your mortgage? I was like, oh, like if I work in tech, it's not that bad. It's like, I have a year's worth of savings to keep me thrown. If it looks like I'm running out, I'll go and find a job. It's not that bad. And then to your other point, which I've completely forgotten about now. What were you saying at the end of it?
You can always do something else as consultancy, right? There's always something else.
Exactly. So yeah. And so to your other point as well, the skills that you need to be able to find consultancy work, it's different to working on, say, indie apps, but I think it's still the same applies, is that a lot of that is networking. Like a lot of the way that I get my work in is networking. Like it's speaking at conferences, it's speaking to people, it's being online, being on Discord and Slack and answering questions and stuff, and building your kind of personal brand.
And relationships.
And relationships and getting to know people. So if you're very good at that and you focus on that and you work on that to build that point up, the skills you need or the reputation and the kind of personal brand you need to be able to find contract work is very similar to the skills that you need to be able to find a job. So I remember Sean Allen was exactly the same. He's built up a great online presence, a big brand.
Hold this one, Sean Allen. There's a spider right on top of your head.
How's that?
You can still see it. If you put your head up, you can see it. There you go.
Oh, hello. Pop him down.
Yeah, he wants to be.
Wants to get me on the podcast.
He wants to be in the Going Indie podcast. Yeah. Maybe he's indie. I don't know.
Yeah, never know. He's trying to get his own job.
This episode is sponsored by the Swift Concurrency course. Swift 6 is bringing major changes to concurrency, and staying ahead is crucial. The Swift Concurrency course makes async await, actors, and sendable easy to understand with real-world examples. Whether you're migrating existing code to Swift 6 or starting fresh, this course gives you the confidence to migrate successfully and helps you write thread-safe, modern, asynchronous code in Swift. Get started today at swiftconcurrencycourse.com. Thanks for sponsoring this episode. Sean Allen.
So yeah, so like a great example of that is Sean Allen. So he's built up this great online brand and personality, and people know him really well. And then he decided he wanted a proper job. He wanted the environment of working with people and working on a team and stuff. So he just put out a tweet and said, "I'm looking for a proper job." And I think it was like a day, and he had a job lined up because he's built that brand and that thing. So if you're doing the same thing as an indie developer, like working on apps, people get to know you and say, "Okay, now I'm looking for something new."
That's also a thing. You're not unknown in that case.
Yeah.
But the crucial part here is to be able to build a relationship with somebody, be able to go out in a community. It's also intimidating.
It is, definitely, yeah.
And we both speak at conferences. We are quite social, I think, but if you aren't and you still want to go indie, like, do you think it's really crucial to be able to build a brand, build a presence, build relationships? Is that really, would you be able to be here as an indie without that?
I think it would be a lot harder. So like if you don't have that kind of personal brand, when you launch your apps, doing the marketing and stuff and getting it out there and getting people to know it is hard if you're not there talking to people and showing them. So if you're launching an app and you want to do your own app and you build it and you launch it, you need to tell people about it. You need to get out there and show them about it. You need to go to the conferences and explain and talk about it and like show them and kind of speak to as many people as you can about it. And I think if you're not comfortable doing that, it can be a lot harder to build the app unless you kind of go viral. But those things are pretty rare. most of the apps are slow burners that have that kind of exponential growth. And that's done through effort and hard work.
Yeah, this is a module in my course. It's really about building relationships, audience growth, marketing, right? Like in that module, I talk about the opportunities that you can't see yet, hidden opportunities, right? You talk with people, you spend time on conferences, you do open source work. It's not measurable that it will return something.
The ROI and things like that
is really
very difficult.
Yeah, and maybe that's actually a nice segue into this, right? You do a lot of these things. You do a lot of conferences, and you do a lot of open source. Like from the surface, it almost looks like you only do those things, and it's not even really clear how you make money. You never promote yourself as a consultancy. You feel like maybe I just didn't see those.
I could probably do a bit of a better job, yeah.
Yeah, but still, you're doing great, right? Like, how do you know that the things that you're doing are worth it and are worth the investment, so to say?
It's hard to measure, certainly. I think for things like conferences, they tend to be pretty like zero costs if you're speaking. So if you're speaking at conferences, essentially travel and accommodations paid for. So the cost of me going to a conference is very little. You might be a few meals here and a taxi to the airport or something like that. Yeah, but the actual kind of getting to the conference and speaking and staying there it doesn't cost you anything. So it might take me, 20, 40 hours to write a talk that I can give a few times and stuff. It's not a huge amount of work that requires into going into that. And then any kind of work that you get out of that is kind of almost great return, free return.
Yeah.
And it is hard to measure that, but I can clearly count like several occasions where I've got consultancy pieces of work from speaking to people at conferences, whether it's people seeing my talks or whether it's talking to them afterwards or talking to them at the parties or talking to them in the pub or stuff. And like, you have those kind of connections and then people remember you, be like, oh, actually I'm doing this. Do you think, how would this work? And you have that conversation, then all of a sudden you've got like a 2-month piece of work lined up.
Yeah, I think for Rocket Sim, I'm using Vapor as well. And I think it always made totally sense to pick Vapor because I knew it was the project that's been spoken about at conferences, probably mostly by you. So
yes, pretty much, yeah.
And I recognize what you're saying as well with Rocket Sim, where I'm speaking at conferences too. I always mention Rocket Sim, and there's always teams approaching me afterwards. And either they talk about features they want or actually telling me like, hey, we want to buy licenses. How does it work, right? So I think combined with the fact that indeed, it's actually fun. You go to a conference.
I mean, it's not a hard life, is it?
It's not a hard
Travel around the world and meet your friends at conferences.
Exactly, and it's being paid, so it costs you time, right? Especially if you're family, that is tricky. But but still, it's also investment in it's part of your work in a way, and maybe especially as an indie. And then the relationships you get out of it that might not even return something directly might eventually, it brought you here as well, maybe, right? Like this podcast. So it has many different outcomes over time even.
Yeah.
But once again, you need to be able to go to a conference and speak out there, right? So maybe some people are listening. I'm imagining they aren't like us yet. They would love to give a talk, but they aren't like that yet. And what I want to know is, have you always been so social? Have you always been able to give talks? Or do you remember your first talk?
I do remember my first talk. It was awful. I'm not like a massively extroverted person. I'm generally quite introverted.
Oh, really?
I have a very different stage presence than I do normally, which I find very fascinating. There's definitely something going on there. But my first talk was terrible. It didn't go very well. It wasn't very clear. It wasn't like well delivered. The flow and the timing was completely off. And it's just practice. Like no one's born a great speaker. No one's born as a great conference talker. It's just practice. So for things like that, you can use like meetups and stuff that have very low like requirements and stress and pressure. Like there's
Smaller
no pressure.
audience.
Yeah, you might be talking to 10 people, 15 people, whatever.
Which can be more intimidating for some.
It can be, yes. But it's like the pressure on meetups, like you just go in an evening. It's not like you're traveling somewhere. You go in an evening. You can go regularly and kind of get to know people first and then talk. And I always do my conference talks at a meetup before I actually give them at a conference.
Okay.
Because I find even practicing talks out loud, it doesn't work unless you're doing it in front of people. So that kind of, I use that as practice to work out, do my talks work? Is the flow right? Is the timing right? Do I need to tweak stuff? But yeah, like in terms of learning to speak at conferences, it's just practice. Like most things in life, it's just go out there, try it and practice it. You might enjoy it. I mean, if you don't, that's fine. And like you can go down other avenues of doing personal branding and stuff like that. But it's not a difficult life. You know, the stuff we get to do, there's a lot of investment and there's definitely time issues. And if you've got family, it can be hard being away and stuff. But getting to travel around the world and, you know, hang out with your mates in random cities in the world, and
absolutely,
it's not bad, is it?
Yeah, I witnessed you drinking baby Guinness and we ate pizza. And no, it's absolutely great. And I think I totally agree with that. It's practice that you know, results in getting more convenient in it. And I've seen many first-time speakers doing a great job.
Oh, yeah.
But what's fascinating to me, like your first talk, I'm bet that you didn't get any people coming after you right after, like, Tim, you did a terrible job, or did they?
Oh, no one gave me bad feedback, no.
So it's really your own...
It's your own internal critique, yeah.
Right. So in a way, you could also always say, like, people want you to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah.
They want you to be doing a great job. And there's always somebody, even though you maybe didn't present it the way you wanted, you still present valuable content.
Exactly.
They still learn from it.
And everyone's got valuable content. Like, I speak to lots of people being like, oh, I'd love to do talks, conferences, but I've got nothing interesting to talk about. Complete rubbish. Like, everyone's worked on something interesting or a difficult problem or something, and people might think, oh, but everyone knows about this, and they really don't. Like, having those kind of interesting talks of stuff you've actually done that you're passionate about, that you know, is far better than talks about random stuff. And so if you want to start talking, and there will be interesting stuff you can talk about from your experience and your work.
Yeah, stay close to what you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Which already makes it easier to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you forget words, well, it's not practiced because you talk about something you already know. So
yeah, it's inherent knowledge. Yeah.
Every time you give the talk, it will probably be different, unless you're really scripting everything out, which makes it really hard to stay on track. And if you're lost off track, then stay close to who you are, what you do, and then giving a talk will be much easier. That first talk didn't went so well. Did you get people to approach you with positive things?
Yeah, I mean, like I remember I got off stage. So it was a conference in Chester called Code Mobile in 2018, I think it was 2017, 2018. And I got off stage. I'd done a live demo that hadn't gone very well.
Classic.
Yeah, classic. My slides didn't look great. I'd forgotten to say half the things thought I was gonna say, that kind of thing. Most people don't know that. Like, no one knows that, oh, you're going to say all this stuff, but you didn't say that. They just know the content you gave. And so I got off stage and I had like 5 or 6 people waiting to talk to me. Like, oh, I've got this question about, like...
This was a terrible talk.
Yeah, this is my terrible talk. And that kind of feedback of like, oh, no, actually people did enjoy that. They were interested. It's like, oh, okay, no, maybe it wasn't that bad. I mean, I still think, looking back, I think it was a bad talk, just from my experience. But
of course,
you got to start somewhere, right? And the people watching it didn't think it was a terrible talk and didn't get anything from it.
Super fascinating. It's also when speakers say something, oh, sorry, I didn't have to say this. And then they continue to talk. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, now I know you didn't plan on saying this. If you just continued, I had no clue, right? It's all about just get going with the flow and let the slides speak for you. And dare to stand there and at least say something. Mm-hmm. That's basically it, right? And the first step is always the biggest, but your second talk will already flow better. And if it's the same talk,
even better, yeah.
Even better, right? Like, it makes it easier. Fun fact is that when I gave my first conference talk, I was called 24 hours before. They knew from a meetup, just like you, that I gave that talk already. Mm. It was actually Do iOS, where you'll be speaking tomorrow. And I was scared as well, and my hand was shaking. I think I was drinking a Red Bull or something. I'm not sure what it was, but eventually, when I got off stage, somebody approached me from WeTransfer, and that's how I got my job at WeTransfer. And that led to eventually me starting my blog and going indie. If you think about it, that one decision of saying yes to that call I got 24 hours before the conference made all the difference. Yep. So in a way, it's not only daring to step up and give that talk, it's also about creating your own opportunities.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it? Making yourself visible, go to the conferences, and let them see who you are and open that door for being approachable. Before we dive back into this episode, I want to quickly share something that could change your journey. If you're dreaming of turning your side project into full independence, my Going Indie course is designed to guide you every step of the way. Visit goingindie.com and let's make your indie dreams a reality. That's going-indie.com. Enjoy the rest of the episode. Which brings me to the second point. Giving a talk is one thing, but being present at a conference and speaking with all those people, some are really like you're an introvert yourself, normally.
Normally, yeah.
I wouldn't say so.
Depends how much beer I've had.
Gotcha. Okay. Oh, that's the trick. Now we know it. But how do you deal with people? Like, have you always been good at that as well, or was that something you had to learn too?
It's something you have to learn as well. Like you have to learn to almost force yourself to talk to people. It's a lot easier when you are a speaker, and especially when you kind of get more established as a speaker, because people will come up to you and talk to you and have questions and stuff. But in like the early days, you have to like force yourself to go and talk to people, and just like put yourself out there. And it's hard, especially if you're not like used to that and you don't enjoy that. It is really hard, but it gets easier and gets easier. And then the more you talk to people, people come to talk to you, and the more you talk at conferences, people come to talk to you more. And now, like I'm pretty confident I can go to a conference and I'll probably know people there anyway. But even if I didn't, people are going to come up to me because they know who I am. They want to talk to me. They want to ask questions about Vapor or Swift, or they want to talk to me about my talk and stuff. And that makes it a lot easier because then the onus is on them to come to you. But you just need to put yourself out there. And if it helps, go with colleagues to your conferences so you have people that you know. And then you can kind of start to bring people into the group as you're talking and stuff. It's just it's taking that step and making yourself a little bit uncomfortable and seeing the growth from that.
What do you think it makes it uncomfortable? Like, do you think people are afraid that people don't want to talk with you, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the kind of person you are. But like for me personally, when I first started, you think, oh, I've only got questions that people know the answers to, so it's going to sound stupid if I ask questions. People aren't going to be interested in what I say. People are already talking amongst their groups. Everyone knows everyone. I don't know anyone here. Like I'm on my own. And none of that's true at all. Like there's no
mindset, right?
Yeah, it's all mindset. There's no stupid questions. Like you might ask a question to someone who knows the answer, and that's why you're asking them. But 3 people who are in that group talking to them don't know the answer, and they're interested to learn.
And what is the worst case?
Yeah, you find out the answer. Exactly.
Or they don't really want to talk with you, and you continue your journey, and you grab a coffee, and hey, you're suddenly talking with somebody that also wants coffee, right?
Yeah. And frankly, at conferences, almost everyone's friendly. Like no one's going to be mean to you or horrible to you. Or
people are there as well to connect, isn't it?
Everyone's in the same boat,
and probably they are scared to talk with you as well. So in a way, you can help each other.
Yeah, you taking that step brings them in, and then it makes it easy for everyone.
So it all comes down to, if we put your whole journey all together, it all comes down to just doing it.
Essentially.
Putting yourself...
Just taking that step and seeing where it goes. Yeah, it's a lot of what my life, from the outside, definitely appears to be winging it. I think there's a lot of effort that goes into it and a lot of hard work, but it's just taking those jumps and like, where's this going to go? I don't know. We'll see.
Super interesting stuff. So back to your life journey. We're now in 2017, where you started to give conference talks. We know that you are almost the branding of Vapor, while you're not the original one behind Vapor. It's almost like Elon Musk with Tesla in a way. I won't call you Tim Musk or something. I won't do that. But so eventually you also made it sound really easy that I hired my first developer or my first colleague in a way. Like, how did that decision point came around? Because if I look for myself and I'm indie, I'm more concerned about my own income. And if I add another person to my team, yes, that will likely result in more growth, but it's also more risk and more depth.
Yeah.
And this was in the time of COVID, to draw the picture?
I think it's 2020, and I got my first employee, yeah.
So it was uncertain times, but on the other hand, also certain times, because many people wanted to go on online businesses and stuff. Can you draw that journey, how you ended up hiring your first colleague and employee? And
Yeah, of course. So I will say that the hiring people and employing people is probably the most stressful thing I've ever done.
okay,
Or in terms of like the risk factor. Because as an indie developer, if you don't pay yourself for a month, it's probably okay. You've probably got savings and stuff that you can live by and it's not the end of the world.
you prepare for it.
You prepare for it. If you miss payroll for your employees who are relying on that income, then that's a big problem. So that step is definitely, that was the biggest, most thought out step I've probably had in terms of, right, am I going to start to employ people and can I do it? It was definitely the hardest point. But the point where I got to the point was in COVID, and I had a big long-term contract that I was working on. I was doing my open source stuff. I had another smaller contract that I was also working on, and then I got another request for quite a big contract. So I was probably doing like, the hours were supposed to be like, 10 hours open source, 20 hours on this big project, 10 hours on this little project. And then there's like 20 hours a week coming in. They're like, can you do this for 20 hours a week? I was like, well, I'm already working more than the 40 hours I would like to. I don't really have the capacity to do like 60, 70 hour weeks consistently. And so I was like, well, maybe I should, now's the point to reach out and hire someone.
So did you hire somebody or did you sign somebody for your company? Because that's two different things, right? Did you get an employee or did you get a contractor?
So technically it was a contractor because it allowed me to hire remotely, because the employment laws, certainly in the UK, meant that if I was to employ someone for my company, they'd have to have the legal right to work in the UK, which after Brexit got very complicated. So it was, they were hired as contractors, but it was still like a full-time, 35 hours a week contract, and as if
Same expectations.
Same
in terms
expectations,
of,
yeah. Still working full-time, still working and representing my company and me and stuff. So they were a Broken Hands employee, essentially.
Yeah. Broken Hands is your
And Broken Hands
company.
is my company, that does server-side Swift training and consultancy, essentially.
We need to talk about that name later.
Yeah, we'll get onto that, definitely.
We'll get to that.
And so I was like, right, let's start hiring someone. And I started talking to a couple of people, and I got a lot of interest. And I was like, right, I'm going to do this properly. So I put out an open call, basically saying I have a job, work for me full time. The perks are, I've kept this perk, is that you get to do 25% open source time. So any hours that you do, you'll get 25% of those hours to work on open source stuff. So it'd be 75% client work, 25% open source stuff, which is, it's a big way of getting good people, because people want to do open source stuff because it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think I had like 40 people apply for this role.
Okay.
Part of that was because I have this brand and like people know me and they want to work on Swift and Swift on the server because it's interesting.
But this was in a time where everybody had a job, right?
Yeah.
The job market was different than today.
The job market was different today.
So getting 40 people to apply is...
Yeah. And I mean, it was hard sorting through them. I think I did interviews for like 8 or 9 people. And eventually chose someone who turned out to be fantastic, really good. They worked with me for about 1.5 years, I think. And that was the start. And then that kind of grew the company to the point where I was doing, as a company, 70 hours a week of contract work. And then more requests come in, and then more requests come in. I was like, okay, well, now I want to get up to 90 or 100 hours a week. So maybe I'll get someone part-time and do 20 hours a week.
I love how you connect, and it makes total sense. But you connect the hours of work that you get in to the hours of people that you can hire, in a way. Did you literally also pay because you started with just an extra client that brings in 20 hours per week, but you hired an employee full time.
Yeah.
So how did you fill up the gap?
So I actually cut my hours down to allow myself to work on more open source stuff.
Right.
So the person I hired was doing full time and doing more work, and then I went on to working more on my own stuff and more open source stuff.
Which results in more visibility, more growth, which brings in more clients. You can hire another employee. It's almost like a flywheel, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a big snowballing thing, and the more you put into it, the more you invest. It grows itself.
And did it scale like that? Because you also hire employees, which also brings in more work for you to manage. Like taxes, salaries.
Yeah, I mean the overheads do grow a little bit. You've got, you have to have your Slack subscriptions and GitHub subscription, GitHub seats and stuff like that, and anything else they need and things like that. And the overhead start to build up a little bit. But I mean, I'm on 3 or 4 people now, and it's not that different to 1 or 2. I think when you kind of get to actual employees in 10, 20, 30, that's when it starts to get a bit more complicated.
And can we, because you do client work, right? And that's super easy to connect to how much money there will be in. And you also said earlier that you have your own recurring income definition with the SLAs. How would it work for somebody that has several apps? Would you say like, okay, if you reach like 10K monthly recurring revenue, you hire somebody for 5 or 4K per month, and then you split your own income in a way. But then, like, can we draw something for somebody that doesn't do client work?
Yeah, so if you're doing like app work and stuff, and you want to, let's say you've got an app and it's getting really popular, and you've got all these ideas for features that you want to do, you don't have the time because there's only so much time that you can put into it. Yeah, if you get to the point where you're like, okay, well, I need this much money to live on comfortably. Let's say, I don't know, 5K a month is like a figure just made up. Now my monthly recurring revenue is now 10K a month. I've got that 5K a month buffer that I can then do something with. I can either put it towards savings or I can reinvest it in different things like ads or hiring a designer to make the app look better. Or maybe I could hire someone for 3 or 4K a month, however many hours that works out for them. And I can start to implement all of these features that people are asking for. And you'll have a feature set that people have been asking for. You might use different apps or forms or different feedback things to get feature requests in and stuff, and you know what people want. And you can be like, well, I can hit these, the kind of rough estimates of like, that's going to take a month, that will take 2 months.
Yeah.
And then you can start to see, well, if I can then invest that and grow, and then you can basically just track your monthly recurring revenue of, okay, well, it was 10K a month here, slowly growing. I then hired someone. So my monthly recurring revenue is still 10K a month. My costs have now gone up.
Yeah.
And then a month or 2 later, you can see that graph starts to go up.
Hopefully,
fingers crossed. And you make that money back of the, let's say, 4K or however much you're paying your employee.
Yeah.
And now you're back to making that 10K buffer and you've got your 5K buffer.
But your product grows faster.
And then, that monthly recurring revenue should go up and up, hopefully.
And should you focus on the features that the users really want, or should you hire somebody to focus on more growth features that are for sure bringing in more money? How would you make that decision?
It depends on how well you know your app and the market, I think. Like if you know that you implement something and that's going to bring in people, then yeah, I'd go for that. There's always also the thing of tech debt and how much time do you spend updating to Swift 6, for instance, which it's got to be done at some point, but does it bring any benefit to your users? No. Is it going to grow your monthly recurring revenue? No. Not in the short term, certainly. It might help in the longer term because your app will be more stable and you'll get less crashes, so people are going to stick with your app. So it's a hard trade-off to balance that, I think. But yeah, I think just implement the features that you know people want that are going to help grow the revenue, if that's what your goal is.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Have you considered not hiring somebody for development, but hiring somebody for marketing maybe, or like a different position? I think in your case it made sense because you got contracting. But I can also imagine that somebody is pretty good at development, but just lacks marketing skills. So it makes more sense to hire somebody to take over that investment, isn't it? Have you had that thought process for your first employee?
Not really, no. It was always like, I know that this work needs to be done. I have these hours and I need to get it done. I think as you kind of grow more, there's definitely a bit of, okay, maybe I should start to look at someone to do sales and outreach and stuff and to get more work in. because certainly as you get more and more people, you have to have that work keeping coming in, and contracts stop and end and start and stuff. And so you want that kind of pipeline of work keeping. So when you get to the size of where you have people that you want to keep going, then maybe it's worth getting someone to do sales or bring in money or marketing or stuff to make sure you have that pipeline.
Yeah.
But I would think that's a very kind of personal decision in terms of where you are personally.
And how did it change you as a person? Because before you were probably full-time developing, because you were the only one at Broken Hands and you did all the client work. And the more employees you get, the more work you give away.
Yep.
So if we compare Tim in 2017 to Tim today, are you still happy and are you different, or like what changed? Because that could be a reason to not hire employees, right?
It could well be, to fair. I mean, like when you start to hire people, you've got to manage them. Like, and you can have fantastic employees, and I've got amazing people, but you still have to manage them. You still have to make sure they're happy. You still have to make sure they've got work. And if you have, like, I've done internships as well. So I've worked with universities in Belgium and Italy to have people come work with me for a few months as an intern. And you've got to make every day have like an hour meeting with them and manage them. And that's an investment. Like, it's time that you're spent not working, not earning, essentially. But one of those people now work for me full time and do a great job. I spend a lot of my time managing clients, which is part of the downside of contract work compared to your own apps, is that, you have to manage the clients and manage the expectations and make sure they're happy and make sure they see the progress of what you're doing and stuff. So I think, like, these days I do spend more time on kind of more businessy stuff. And it's the same in Vapor as well. Like, we have sponsors, we have like website stuff and marketing, and we have a online shop where you can buy merch, or we will be by probably by the time this is live at least. And all those things take time and effort and stuff, and it's not dev work. You're not writing code.
That's what I mean.
And it's a balance and a trade-off. It's like, what do you enjoy? Because I could outsource a lot of that. And the management stuff less so, but things like building the Vapor website or getting stock in for online shops and managing clients. You can get account managers and client relationship managers and stuff to do all that. And part of that is a control thing, I think.
Yeah.
In that it's very hard to let go of your baby if you've grown the company from scratch.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
I own everything. But it's the same if you're working on an app. Is that when it's just you, all that code is just you, and you're very protective over it. As soon as you start getting people doing pull requests and that you've hired, you have to kind of let go a little bit. You have to say, okay, it might not be the exact way that I write the code, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe having that diversity of thought, of seeing different perspectives on how you do things would be a good thing. And maybe you can learn as well.
This is what scares me the most. I'm still the solo developer on Rocket Sim. I maybe once invited somebody to the code, but I also feel like hiring somebody makes my code available to that person.
Yep.
And if I stop that contract, they will still have that code, because I'm sure they will keep it. I don't know. You can't see that.
The way that Git works, yeah.
Is it really trust and just?
Yeah, I think it's a little trust. I mean, like, you can definitely write in your contracts of who owns the IP and stuff, and if people start to sell that off, and there are legal repercussions. Like, some of the clients I work with are like education and healthcare, and we have some quite strict rules around in terms of who can have access to the code and making sure. But that's all written in contracts and stuff, and make sure that people are, you cannot share this and stuff. Like, you could try, and there'd be if one of my employees started sharing confidential code of one of my clients, then that's a big problem.
Yeah,
but it's a trust thing. Like, you hire people that you get a good feel for, and you're not going to hire someone completely random. You interview them, you kind of get the vibes. You might know them through the work you've done or open source communities or stuff like that.
Yeah. I think for you it's different that it's the code from the client, right? Like, if you're an indie developer, you have your own project, then you give away your baby that brings in your salary. And if somebody gets that code and republishes it in a way, and this is doom thinking, right? Like, it's definitely probably the hiring process, or maybe hire somebody that you worked with before that like it's almost a friend. He would
exactly. Yeah, I think like that's another great thing about going to conferences or being involved in the community or doing meetups and stuff like that, is that you can build those relationships and get to know people, and that when it comes to the point of you're working on an indie app and you want to hire someone to work on some features, is that you'll probably know who you want to hire. You might have someone in mind. You might know all the people doing indie work or want to do some contract work and stuff because you've met them at conferences and you kind of got to know them a little bit. And once you've kind of built that kind of initial relationship, it's a lot easier to trust someone than someone random you met off the internet who just sent you an email.
Yeah, totally. So, and your company quite evolved. How does it influence your work-life balance? Because if you hire more employees, it's more depth, it's more things to worry about. Potentially, you scale up your clients. You have so much more on your plate. Did it affect your personal life?
Yeah, it definitely
work-life
does.
balance?
Like, running your own company is hard work. Like, no getting around it. Like, building your own app is hard work. There's no getting around it. Like,
you work 60 hours to not having to work 40 hours.
Yeah, exactly. You have to put in the grind, especially at the start. Is that you have to put in that hard work. There's no shortcuts to building a successful company, building a successful app, building anything successful. Is like you have to actually put in the effort. And it's part of it's a calculated risk of like, okay, well, I know that for the first year, I'm gonna have to work more than I probably would want to or would like to. But if you're doing something that you enjoy and you're passionate about, it's a lot easier to work those slightly longer hours and stuff. In terms of work-life balance, you have to actually be proactive about it because it's very easy. Depends on your life as well, but it's very easy to keep working until like midnight without thinking about it. And then it's like, oh, I haven't like gone outside today or spoken to anyone or seen my family or seen my friends and stuff like that.
Does that still happen to you these days?
Occasionally. I mean, I'm in a difficult position where my clients are all over the world.
Tim, I've seen you working at a conference while we had...
Well, so the conferences are an interesting thing because I do 10, 15 conferences a year.
Yeah.
If I wasn't working at those conferences, I'd never get any work done. So I have to kind of work at conferences anyway.
Okay, fair point. That was a great escape.
Yeah, it was a great escape, yeah. But yeah, you have to be proactive about maintaining a good work-life balance. You know, make sure you go to the gym, make sure you get outside, make sure you walk your dog or whatever it is that you do to relax. Don't just work because you will burn out.
And the company name Broken Hands, does that mean that you're constantly spending that money, or has that something to do with somebody else in your life? Or
no, so Broken Hands. So I set up the company originally with a friend of mine. I ended up just doing it on my own, but when we started talking about it, we wanted a name that was slightly fun, slightly memorable, not corporate and like boring. And there's a heavy metal band called Broken Hands.
Oh.
And we thought, that sounds fun, we'll have that. So that's where the name came from. And it's actually worked really well because two things. Number one, the logo, which is like a hand that's kind of broken, looks very like the Swift logo. And people think it's deliberate, and it's really not. It was completely coincidental that it looks like the Swift logo. And number two, it's a very memorable name. I get lots of people that ask me, why is it called Broken Hands? Like, what's the meaning behind that? But
That's
people
true.
remember the name. So that everyone knows what Broken Hands is. It's not like it's Tim Development Limited or whatever. It's Broken Hands. It's kind of a fun name that people learn and remember. And yeah, it's getting out there. The company name's out there.
it's almost like your Twitter handle. Somehow I always remember that too, because I think it's 0xtim.
Yep.
Right? Like, yeah, if you're a developer, then it resonates, right? This is a nice marketing tip,
Yeah.
Tim.
I think you need to have, if you're trying to market stuff, it's the same with app names as well.
Yeah.
Is you need something that's not boring. You need something that stands out or is kind of catchy or that people will remember. Certainly people remember. Certainly people can spell easily.
We increase the pressure now of the name that you pick for your company and for your app.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, it's so important.
You can change it though. If it doesn't work, you can change it.
That's true. Yeah. All right. And yeah, it's funny how we end with this question. It must have been in the beginning, but it's funny how that flows. And I always like to end an episode by thinking about what tip would you give to somebody that's currently listening and they have a side project they're working on, and the episode is full of tips already, right? Like, go give that conference talk and such. But if there's one thing, what would you say to those that have a side project and dream of going independent?
Take the risk. Like, what is actually holding you back? Is it you're worried about not having money? Or is it worried about that you theoretically might lose money for a month. Can you cope with that? So I would write down the pros and cons. Are you in a financial situation to be able to do it? Because frankly, there are some people who might not be. If you're a single parent, you've got no savings, and you have to just work to put food on the table, an actual job with a guaranteed income might be a bit better for you until you have the buffer where you can maybe spend a few hours working on stuff. But if you were in a kind of a position where you can do it, write down what the benefits are, write down what you want, and write down what's holding you back. And it might be at that point when you've written all those things down, you're like, well, actually, this is a really easy decision for me. Because like we've said throughout the episode, the risk is very low. Try doing part-time if you can, because that makes it even lower and very easy to switch back. And just give it a go and try it. And if it doesn't work, then take it as a learning experience. No one's going to critique you for trying and failing.
That's also right. Make sure you have that way back,
Mm-hmm.
either by knowing your job market or by starting with 1 day a week. So you still have that 4 days week income.
Mm-hmm.
Great tip. And I feel like it's aligning very well with what we've discussed.
I think so, yeah.
Your indie journey definitely consists of many decision points where you dared to make that step on stage, giving that talk, hire your employee, going on that insecure vapor journey.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely great. Thanks a lot for joining me today. If somebody wants to follow you, where can they find you? I told the Twitter handle already.
I mean, I'm 0xTim on pretty much all of the social media, so you can come find me there. And then, brokenhands.io or timc.dev are my 2 sites.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Tim.
Thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
That's it for this episode. Every indie journey is unique, and you might find inspiration in other episodes as well. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, or leave a rating on your favorite podcast platform. It helps me reach more creators who dream of going indie. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.